Hi, Teresa here again for Blind Spots, and we're continuing with the series about why we can't afford the basics, and in particular, housing. People have been told the same thing again and again, all over the world basically. Work hard, save money, settle down, build a stable life, and everything will be fine. But what happens when no matter how hard you work, or no matter how many decades you've worked for, work no longer buys you stability? What happens when you can pay rent but still can't get a mortgage? When you have a job, but not the kind of job or contract that landlords or banks will accept? And if you do manage to finally get a rental, how can you leave it for a better job when there may be nowhere else to go? The old promise was simple: work, save, rent, buy, settle. Retire and live the dream, compensated for all the hard work you've done. But that promise depended on conditions that no longer exist for millions of people. In the West, in Western democracies, stable jobs, predictable wages, affordable rents, realistic rental deposits and conditions, accessible credit, and house prices that still had some relationship to income levels. The housing system still behaves as if that world exists, but it doesn't. And for many people, and perhaps the majority, the labour market has moved on. In a tight rental market, landlords don't just choose who can pay. They choose who looks the safest for them on paper. The same happens with banks and with their risk management algorithms. Both like permanent contracts, fat pay slips, references, deposits, guarantors, local history, references, and sometimes many months of rent paid in advance. So the rental market doesn't just price people out, it screens them out. You may be able to pay the rent, but if you can't perform stability through your paperwork, the system treats you as risky and moves on to someone else with more cash in their account. And then comes the trap that people don't talk about enough. Much of job security nowadays depends on mobility. But how is mobility evolving in modern times when it comes to life and work? Renting was supposed to be a mobility advantage. You don't own the asset, but you're flexible to move for a better job or whatever life circumstances you might be experiencing. In a broken rental market, which is what we have now, that flexibility is off the table. Once someone finds a tolerable rental, they may be afraid to leave, even if the house is too small, too cold, too expensive, too far from work, or no longer fits their life. Or what if you have a rental and you don't have a job? Leaving your rental to get the job would be very difficult, because re-entering the rental market can mean higher rent, impossible competition, stricter screening, or no home at all. And if you leave the country for work elsewhere, or because there's no housing where you live, even in the European Union, you will have no record, no credit history, no addresses, and that will all become obstacles, additional obstacles to finding somewhere to live, even if you have a job. Renters get the insecurity of not owning without the advantage or freedom of being able to move because of the housing situation. Then there's the ownership route. People are told, well, if renting is insecure, just buy. But high rent and low job stability and low wages prevent saving. No savings means no deposit. No deposit means no mortgage. No mortgage means continued renting. And continued renting means continued inability to save. The vicious cycle. Even worse, people can be trusted to pay someone else's mortgage through the rent they pay to a landlord or whatever, but not trusted to pay their own. Because the mortgage system needs stable income, clean credit, and predictable future earnings if such a thing exists. And even for those who do manage to buy, ownership is not simple freedom or problem solved. In a high price market, the cost of entering stability is decades of debt. A mortgage can provide security, but it also creates exposure over the long term. Interest rates, job loss, illness, divorce, insurance costs, repair bills, negative equity, climate risk, spread over decades. So ownership can be security, yes, but only if the debt required to access it doesn't destroy the security it promises. The housing system doesn't simply sell houses. It sells access to stability through you having to take on large amounts of long-term debt. And when work no longer gets people through the housing gate, family wealth steps in, if there is any family wealth. And that is a big if nowadays. Help with a deposit, a guarantor, living at home while saving, inheriting property, rent support from parents, a safety net during unemployment. That's what traditionally family wealth used to do. Increasingly, that's not the case. So the housing ladder did not disappear. It's just impossible for most people to get on the first rung of the ladder. But what about inheritance? Generational shifting of property. So even that is splitting into classes. Some people inherit clean, mortgage-free, usable assets. Others inherit impossible debt, tax exposure, repair costs that they can't take on, family disputes, climate risk, or a house they cannot live in because their work, children, healthcare, and life are elsewhere. Inheritance is only security if you can afford to keep, use, or sell what you inherit. This is why the housing crisis is not only about prices. It's about access, job security, wage quality. Housing is how people access work, schools, healthcare, banking, benefits, safety, relationships, care, and community. All the basics of life. But modern housing systems increasingly demand that people be already stable before they are allowed to become stable. And when that happens, a stable life stops being something work can build, because work is not stable anymore. And when that happens, stable life stops being something that work or employment can build, because work and employment are increasingly unstable. And that critical link between employment, wage levels, and housing, I think, is often missed. And that, I think, is the blind spot.